All right, Destination Horror fans, you've got Jose Torchbearer Torres and Armadillo Dave coming at you on this episode. And this episode, being that it is Halloween season, it is haunt season, we're going to talk about the movies that we watched to get into the haunt mood. So we're going to talk about a couple different things and some updates that I actually got today, recently. That was pretty cool. But Armadillo Dave, how's it been? It's been a minute since we talked. How are you doing, sir?
And cannot complain.
That's always good.
Yeah, excited. Just doing the usual stuff I do.
Yeah, I heard that, brother. All right, so let's go ahead and just jump into it. When you think Halloween, when you're in the month of October, what are some of the top movies or movie series? Because we know that there's plenty of sequels. That's an entire franchise. You don't have to worry about naming specific ones if it's a whole franchise. But what are some Halloween flicks that get you in that Halloween season mood?
For me, the Friday the 13th series is absolute king for me,
Very cool.
and I will delve into that more later. But I also like the Halloween
Mm.
series. I never really gravitated towards Nightmare on Elm Street, which is kind of funny considering I went as Freddy Krueger. Like in third or fourth grade, there's a picture of me, my sister, and a dear friend of ours from
Wow.
the neighborhood. Uh,
Yes.
he's dressed as a ninja. My sister was a princess or something, and I'm Freddy Krueger. But I've never really enjoyed the movies.
Oh,
Uh, Other than that, like as a family, we decided to buy the Universal Monsters set. The Mummy,
very
the
awesome.
Frankenstein, all that kind of stuff. Which, as a kid, I liked those characters, but other than catching the things on TBS occasionally, never really saw a lot of them.
Mm.
I mean that's it for me. Like to me, it's like gets late September into October. I think it's time to start watching Friday the 13th and Halloween's mainly. But we kind of got the family friendly thing with doing the old black and white horror stuff. It's kind of fun
No,
too.
very true. Like I said, up until a few, maybe 2 years ago, when I was same thing, when I was a teenager or even preteen, me and my friends, in October, we would every October, whether it was on Halloween weekend or like the weekend before it, we would do for the longest time, a sleepover and have a horror movie marathon. My friends would ride the bus with me home on Fridays. He'd stay Friday night, all day Saturday night, and then we'd take him back on Sunday. And we would watch, you've named some of the primary ones, the Halloween series, Friday the 13th. Nightmare was one of my favorites just because I thought it was a really interesting and unique concept. Halloween, loved it to death. And Friday the 13th, I mean, look, I'm sorry. Those are three franchises or series that don't get old. There may be one or two movies in it that you watch it once in a while, but like I said, when it comes to this season, those three series are pretty much surefire. Some honorable mentions though. Night of the Demons, which that was a staple. I don't know if you've seen that. That's got Linnea Quigley. She was a horror scream queen in the '80s. She was known for that. She was in Return to the Living Dead as well. Any
Hmm.
of the Living Dead movies, the original Romero movies, and even the non-Romero ones, the Living Dead series, those are pretty good. Very much like the Friday the 13th legal battle that's gone on. There was a legal issue with that back in the day, which is why you have the Romero series, which is now affectionately known as the Dead series, and then you have, and I can't remember the other person's name, but you have the Living Dead series. And what it was is that they both worked together on the original black and white Night of the Living Dead. But when it came to the sequels, they wanted to go different directions. So you had Dawn of the Dead came out before any of the other sequels, and Day of the Dead, I believe, was early '80s. Like I said, I could be mistaken. So if I am, rake me over the coals later on the audience there. Um, but you had a setup where the other partner wanted to come out with a series of movies as well. They didn't see eye to eye on it because the Living Dead series, at least the first two movies, kind of had a really interesting comedic aspect, you could say, to a point.
Yeah.
So in the legal battle, they were fighting over, who owns the rights to this and that. So of the Dead went to Romero. So Romero had the rights
Yeah.
to everything of the Dead. So after
Oh yeah.
Night of the Living Dead, that's where you had Dawn of the Dead, Day of the Dead, Land of the Dead, and so forth. The other gentleman got Living Dead. So he had Return of the Living Dead, which is technically, it's kind of weird because they explain in the very spoilers, if you guys haven't seen it, anybody, in the beginning, they kind of explain that the origin was with Night of the Living Dead, but slightly different in that it was a movie. So it's kind of meta in that they
Yeah.
claim that it's a movie in their universe, but it was a movie that was actually based on something that really happened in their universe,
Gotcha.
revolving the
Oh,
zombies, involving zombies. So, but actually, circling back, Friday the 13th. Understand? I don't know if you saw it recently. It looks like the original writer of the first movie actually won some of the credits that he was looking for. So it looks like the way I understand it, and once again, if I'm wrong, I'm sure someone will correct me. But the way I understand it, initially it got reported that he won everything. It turned out it wasn't quite that. There was a split.
yeah. Everything was never on the line.
Exactly.
That was never the question.
Exactly. So what he did get is, I believe he got the title Friday the 13th. That's that. I believe I think he got the title because I think at the time it was an untitled script that he was hired to write. So I don't. That's one of the parts that's kind of murky. So I think he got the title,
Yeah,
but
I can't.
he got the use of Pamela Voorhees.
Right, and Jason and basically Jason's origin, right?
Exactly. In her son died and drowned in the lake, and it turned out that the original writer, and forgive me, I don't remember his name. The original writer
Victor Miller.
actually, yeah, exactly. Thank you. I was about to smack myself.
I'll
I knew
tell I'll
Miller, but
tell
I can
you
remember
why
his first name.
I'll tell you why I know that in a minute.
Well, so it turns out he never enjoyed any of the sequels because he wrote it as a homage to motherhood. This is a woman who was a good mother, whatnot, and that her son died tragically, and it was her seeking justice for him. So he was really on the side of Pamela Voorhees, but that also meant he wrote it as a one story thing. He's like, with a horror movie, you always write in that weird ending, to leave it open. But he never was into the sequels. Now, Sean Cunningham retains the rights to all the intellectual property of the sequels and forward. So the
Right.
story of Jason, the hockey mask, all that he gets.
And another thing that people got twisted about this whole thing was they were blaming Miller for the holdup. Well, really, Horror Inc. decided to preemptively sue him because he was
Mhm.
exercising his contractual right in his belief, and they were saying that he wasn't they were saying he was a writer for hire or work for hire.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they were the ones that initiated the lawsuit. Like he basically just said, I want to exercise my rights to, reclaim my work after 35 years, I think is
Yeah.
and the only reason I know anything about this is because I played Friday the 13th, the game.
That's it. Yeah, same
Oh
here.
man, love that game. Me and my brother-in-law played it all the time. We love that game. And then of course the legal proceedings.
Hmm.
So to your point though, the other day on my website, southatlantawrestling.com,
Hmm.
I shared where Larry Zerner, he's a entertainment trademark copyright lawyer,
Hmm.
and he's also Shelley from part 3 of Friday the 13th.
Small
Yes.
world. Ah.
So he broke down kind of the decision. So if people want to go look that up, they can
That
go
is
there
cool.
and see that. But yeah, so like the whole thing's been very frustrating. And the other thing that's really frustrating, because I don't know if you're like me,
Mm.
even if it's something silly that happens and you think, like, oh, if it only wasn't for this, like they changed the law at some point. At some point, it's supposed to be 55 years. So like,
Oh, that's okay. I
so it
didn't
became
know that.
35 at some point, if I'm not mistaken. Now, y'all, again, you fact check me, audience. Uh, I think it was 55 at one point, which means we wouldn't have all this nonsense right
For
now.
another
We'd have a
20 some
20,
years.
yeah, 20, when I'm 60 instead of 40. So I'm sorry. I'm not trying to cheat my age here.
No, I got you.
63 instead of 43.
Hey, I'm right.
So
Look, I'm just a few months behind you, man.
yeah, so that
62.
yeah, that's right. So like that lawsuit, and like, a lot of people have painted Victor Miller as the villain, which I don't really buy
But yeah, I
personally.
mean,
It's
he was
just
getting his rights.
frustrating. Yeah, it's frustrating for fans of the franchise, fans of the
Franchise.
franchise
Friends of
that
the family, hey.
yeah, fans of the franchise that we couldn't get any, that they stopped this video game before they delivered everything they had promised,
Mm.
and that we couldn't get a new movie because of all this nonsense. But like, I don't blame Victor Miller. I mean, pay that man what he's owed. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah,
So
and the thing is, that's a story that happens, especially in Hollywood, all the time. Where there are writers who they may have come up with the story idea and everything, but then there are writers for hire. But even if they're a writer for hire, what that means and translates to, and I don't know how much of that is true in the case of Friday the 13th, But a writer for hire, that is basically what that means is that somebody, whether it's a producer or director, got an idea for a movie, a concept, right? But they either can't write it or don't want to take the time to write it or they have better things to do, whatever. So they hire a writer, a staff writer to write it. Now, what a lot of people don't understand is all the speech, all the dialogue, all the lines. That is the writer who's coming up with it, with sometimes input from the person who came up with the storyline or concept, sometimes not. You'd be surprised that the only thing was, hey, I want to, using Friday 13th as an example. Like I said, I don't know that this is what happened, but it'd be as simple as me saying, Armadillo, I got this idea about a movie that takes place in a old Catholic girl's dorm room, like a haunted house feature, and it's a killer nun ghost, whatever, but I can't write it, so I want to pay you to actually write it. Here's the key points. This is what I want to happen in the beginning,
Yeah.
middle, and the end. Connect the dots for me. So you are now being paid to connect the story dots. You'll come back and ask me questions, whatnot, but you are actually creating the dialogue of that universe. So I mean, I hate to say it, but yeah, you are, even if you are a staff writer or a hired writer, it was still intellectual stuff that came out of your head that helped make that movie. So I
Right.
think you should be entitled to the work you put into it. But no, yeah, I mean, I'm one of the ones that was also pissed off about the video game. I've seen, and I'm sure you've seen some now. They've actually been putting out on different YouTube channels and different websites some of the content that was like beta content that we're getting ready to release but couldn't. Like
Yeah.
I actually think we saw there was some footage or game content where you saw Jason in part 8 on a boat, where instead of it being a lake scene where you're having to chase him, you're having to chase him in
Yeah.
the boat. So you have the New York scenes there. But no, like I said, I'm just glad that there's some traction, because in one of our episodes when we did Days of the Dead in the beginning of the year in February, we got to speak with Tom. Good Lord, I have to fix that one. I'll put his name in later. We had spoke with the director of Friday 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, and he actually let us know that he already has a script and concept that he's put together, called Jason. I think it's not Jason Lives. I think it's called Jason Forever, and it actually is. I don't know. It's not Crystal Lake. It's Crystal Lake, but it's not his camp. It's another location that's on the same lake where it is, and that's probably where the whole schoolgirl thing came from. It's actually a Catholic retreat or religious retreat for young women. So it's a women's only camp. So, and I thought that was kind of an interesting twist. I'm like, oh, this should be interesting. So,
Yeah, the whole thing, and like in Larry Zerner's point, and I'm going to call him Zerner, not Shelley, although
mhm,
I really want to call him Shelley. Zerner, his point was like, legally there's all sorts of things they could do to like go ahead and continue to make these movies and just cut Victor Miller and the intellectual property, or if that may not be the exact right term,
yeah,
that he owns. But it's kind of like, he's like, ultimately the issue is you've got this iconic character, like you don't want to get into that kind of thing. They just need to come together and finally work out some deal
yeah.
that satisfies both parties, and move on with things the way they kind of were.
And I'd be surprised. Look, if I knew, which everybody knows the fan base that is there for Jason, that is there for Pamela, that is there for Friday 13th, the whole franchise. So there is enough play. There's enough play in the game that they can offer Miller residuals or whatnot, kickbacks for for the rest of the series. Like I said, because at the end of the day, the only thing that I think he technically won, the name of the movie Friday the 13th, I think he got. I'm not sure. So once again, fact check. But Pamela Voorhees and everything to do with Pamela Voorhees was him. So what made the series a series was part 2 forward. Part 1's there because
Yeah.
it's the base, it's the foundation. But what
Yeah.
actually made the series was Jason as an adult, and what really solidified the series, in part 3, him getting his iconic mask, that
Yeah.
became the icon.
As
That's what you think of now.
as a kid, it blew my mind when I grew up and found out that Jason wasn't the hockey mask wearing killer in parts 1 and 2.
Yeah,
Wasn't even the killer in part 1. Like
yeah,
this
yeah, exactly.
blew my mind.
You saw him in
As a kid,
flashback and supposed dream.
I had no idea. It kind of speaks to the point, like before I even saw any of these movies, of how big a part of the zeitgeist
Yep.
that character is,
Mm-hmm.
because like he really was. So, and I'm not trying to get ahead of myself here, but like Jason was such a huge part of just like pop culture.
Oh yeah.
Like because at that time, like in like I think Jason Takes Manhattan came out in 87 or 88, I can't
Mm-hmm.
remember. So I
I
was
think
9
86.
or
Yeah.
10. Yeah, I was 9 or 10. And it was just like, yeah, just at that point they're pretty much cranking out Jason movies
Mm-hmm.
every year,
Yeah. Exactly.
or every other year or whatever. And it's just like, oh yeah, those are like at the time I didn't really want to watch them because, and that's the weird thing. Like I didn't even watch the movies, but I thought Jason was cool.
Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I was nervous about watching movies when I was a kid. I was like, I don't know, I can handle that. A little scared about that, but like, still love Jason Voorhees because he's
Yeah,
cool
there's
looking.
him, Freddy Krueger, and Michael Myers.
Yeah.
Same thing. It's one of those. They were the character by themselves
Yep.
radiated with the fan base. Even people like you said, you didn't have to see the movie to be. You didn't. You could have never seen Nightmare on Elm Street, but you know damn well who Freddy Krueger was. You could have never seen any of the Friday the 13th, and you know who Jason is. You know what someone wearing a hockey mask in Halloween means. You know what that means.
Exactly. Yeah,
um.
it's nuts. And like I said, in third grade, I think it was third grade. It was third through fifth grade. I don't
Hmm.
remember. Like I was Freddy Krueger, and I'll have to send you the picture. But it was, I went and got the Freddy Krueger glove and everything, and I thought it was the
Hmm.
coolest thing. And I wore it for Halloween. And I played with it all the time, and just thought it was the
Oh yeah.
neatest thing. I had never seen that movie. It's just
I,
like Jason,
but you know who Freddy. But you knew who they were.
Freddie and Jason were just these big icons of pop culture.
Hmm.
Michael Myers to me was probably maybe like if they were one, he was like 1A. He might have been lagging just a little behind
Yeah.
in like as far as my knowledge of the character. Although I think he probably has the best movie out of any of them. So which is
Yeah,
kind of interesting.
as far as story, no,
But
because
here's what I always say. I say my son has watched some of them now with me, and I said this. I said I think the Halloween series has the best films out of all of the films, but I enjoy Friday the 13th more.
no, I agree because the thing is with Friday, and I do agree with you on Friday 13th, as well as, and I'll throw in the nightmare as well there. The thing I found with Halloween was first and foremost at that time, and once again, if you want to fact check me, whatever, but you can look at John Carpenter's catalog of works. Um, he never really was too much into the sequel thing. The only reason we got Halloween 2 was I believe that the producers was like, John, the first one was a hit. We got to come back with it. We got to come back with it. Because the first one was 1978. So Halloween 1 predates Friday the 13th by I believe 2 years, because I think it was 1980, and
Yeah, correct.
predates Nightmare on Elm Street, I believe 6 years, 1984. Uh but the major difference was that Friday the 13th and Nightmare, after the first films, they knew they had something. So they knew they had to crank out something. We got to come out with something. I mean, case in point, Friday the 13th, Part 8, Jason Takes Manhattan, is the eighth film in the series, releases in 87, 88, when the first one released in 80.
Yeah,
So that means they did a movie roughly every year
just churning
straight.
them jokers out, man.
Exactly.
And it was just
Nightmare on
like
Elm
a
Street, same thing.
mainstay of like every year it's like, oh, the new Jason movie's out. And
Exactly. It was.
it's funny, and it's funny to me because Jason Takes Manhattan feels like the last time I remember one of those releases feeling like a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also one of my, it turns out, and it has such an incredible premise. Like Jason Takes Manhattan, the I Love New York poster or whatever that I
Yep.
don't even think they could even had to stop using or whatever. But like all that, and then it's like it's one of my absolute least favorite Friday the 13th movies.
I can see that. I think a lot of people. It's like one of those. It's but you have to have it. It still has to be. If you have the collection, it's not the collection without it.
Yeah, sure, of
And
course.
even if it was, I would say of all the ones, I don't want to say it's kind of hard to pick the weakest because there were some that were really awesome. There's some that were like, okay, it was a cool watch. Um, but I'd say my least favorite one, if we're going all the way to Freddy versus Jason, okay, let's just for shit, shits and giggles. I would say my least favorite one was probably Jason X. And not now. Here's the thing: the
Ooh,
Jason X. Let me put. I don't. Not that it was my least favorite one. I liked it, but it took me a while to watch it. Like once I watched it, even I have to admit, it's become a guilty pleasure. Like I I like I do now I can say yes I like it, but there's some people that if
It's
I say
nice.
that I get
It's nice
crucified for
empty.
liking it. So
I
it's like, but deep down it has become, and I've actually said it in another episode as well. It is a guilty pleasure one. It's kind of like, it's the granted, it's the franchise is fantastical. We know that.
of course.
It's definitely like, you definitely have to stretch your realm of belief. But the idea that Jason gets cryogenically frozen, put in space, that's one of those. It's like, okay, I got to get past once you get past it, you watch. It's like, okay, it definitely feels the thriller, the
What
killer, and all that stuff. The wow factor. So it's one of those guilty pleasures. I like sometimes I don't like to admit it. Of
what
course, I'm admitting it here again.
what about it's okay, guys. He just wanted his machete. I mean,
I
come on.
know.
That's an incredible moment.
And I'm sorry, no matter if for people who liked it and didn't like it, I'm sorry. When you saw Uber Jason, Cyborg Jason come
Oh,
out for
he's
the
so
first
cool.
time, I was like, oh shit, just got beyond real now.
Yeah.
I'm like,
Things
hold
have
up. He
yeah,
was
things have
he was
gone
bad when he was
real.
a walking corpse. Now he's a cyborg.
And it's funny because so Manhattan is probably not my least favorite just because Jason Goes to Hell is probably my least favorite.
Yeah, I felt that,
But I
that was kind
literally
of weird.
I literally like all the rest of them.
No,
Like
no, I
all
agree
the
with that.
rest of my if it was Rotten Tomatoes, I give those two a thumbs down. I give 1 through is it 7
Seven,
and
yeah.
then 10 and Freddy versus Jason, I give them all a thumbs up.
Oh yeah, no, and I agree. I loved Freddy versus Jason. That one was a long time coming. I'm glad they finally were able to do it. Um, but no, I would agree with you with Jason Goes to Hell, the Final Friday, because it's one of those. Even though Jason X was a unique film, it took it a unique way, but it didn't challenge the preset mythos of the Jason character. Now with Jason Goes to Hell, there were some things and it wasn't so much about Jason that got me. It was there was they had some really rough storytelling issues with that one. You had the whole thing where now it turns out that Jason, a la Michael Myers style, has a sister. Okay, once again, spoilers. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. Then come back and watch this. So we find out that Jason has a sister and apparently a niece and a grandniece, I guess technically, or second niece, whatever it is, because his sister's daughter is the woman who has a little baby. So, and that he gets destroyed, but then suddenly he can body jump.
Yeah.
It was kind of
It's
like,
just
it's like,
it's
okay,
such a bizarre thing. It's just so like you said, it's I don't know. It's just one of those things where it's like I guess it's kind of like the tease from where at the end of part 5,
Hmm.
which again, spoilers if you don't want to know. I mean, like I don't know why you're listening to this if you don't haven't watched these movies or whatever, but where they tease it like Tommy's a new killer and Jason's out of the picture.
See, and I
Which
thought that was interesting.
it is interesting, but it's kind of like you're taking it in a way that like it's there. I don't know. It's kind of the challenge that comic book writers have.
Hmm.
For example, you got to write these Superman comics since like the 30s or whatever.
Hmm.
And it's like you got to stop it from being stale, but you're also not allowed to change much of anything. You get what
No,
I'm saying?
exactly.
It's like I guess I'm kind of applying that same principle to the people who do these Friday 13th movies. Like I know you feel like you need to evolve it, but I really just want to see hockey mask Jason like hack up people. Like that's
No,
all I want.
yeah, exactly. And with part 5, it's one of those. When I first saw it, I was like, "Oh, this kind of sucks." It's fake Jason. And but then I'm like, you know what? The guy actually tried to tell a story. They actually tried to tell a story that the myth of Jason was that strong that people would believe that he was back. And so I'm like, okay, they're paying respect to the myth that he became in that universe. And that's kind of how I started to look at it. I actually loved the concept that Tommy, already being not mentally balanced from his experience with Jason, that he was so obsessed with everything, and the fact that he had to face him a second time, even though it turned out not to be him, that he
Yeah.
finally became what he feared or slash hated. He finally became that. And I thought, I was like, that's an interesting concept if he is now Jason going forward.
It's
Obviously in
and
part
it's
6 we see that didn't happen, but it was still cool because we still had Tommy showing, hey, he had to get through some stuff because he wigged out even more.
Yeah, so two things about that. So it's kind of like my friend said. He my friend has pitched the idea of a Home Alone movie where Kevin is now the robber because he's like, the whole premise of
Oh my god.
hurt people,
Uh-huh.
like hurt people. He's
This is
like,
true.
and he kind of mentioned it flippantly, but he's like, so Kevin, after dealing with the wet bandits, becomes the thing he hates. So I
Uh,
get it with the Tommy thing.
that's
Second
that's
of
actually
all,
funny.
I would say that this guy who said it, his name, well, we don't call him, his name is Steve.
Mhm.
And usually it's Steve with an exclamation point because we're screaming at him because he said something
Steve.
that's equally hilarious and like wildly inappropriate or
Oh
whatever.
wow.
So, anyways,
Yeah, we know a few of those.
and incredibly quick-witted gentleman. But second of all, Jason Lives is not, it's not the best Friday the 13th movie, but it's like the most perfect combination of like what it's like the if you distilled what a Friday the 13th movie should be, that's it.
Oh
Jason
no,
Lives
yeah.
is it.
Oh no, I mean,
That's the one where they nailed it. It was like perfect.
yeah. I mean, everything you had before, but it still but it still gave the respect to its predecessors. Going all the way back to the first movie. Yeah, and that's actually one thing that I liked about all the movies, all the earlier movies. It was the first four almost started where the previous ones left off, except
Yes,
for the
very
second one
cool.
starts like a few months afterwards. Part three starts like within a few days of the second one, and part four picks up right at the ending of part three. So it was like watching one long movie.
Yeah,
You,
and
you can look at it that way.
that and the little
And
summary thing they did. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to
that's what I'm
step
getting
on
to.
you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
go ahead with that because I
that's
think
exactly
that's
what I'm
really
getting at. At
neat.
the beginning of each film, you had Jason was a boy who
Yeah,
drowned,
that's
but he
it.
didn't stay dead. So, and they're showing excerpts from each movie leading up,
Yes,
from part one
I
all the way up.
love that.
And it's like in Supernatural, the TV show, at each season finale, you'd have the road so far, or the each season premiere. It was like that. You were getting a quick precursor. So even if you, like we said it before, there's how many people who their first Friday the 13th movie wasn't part one. It was
Yeah,
actually one of the sequels, but
sure.
you could actually watch part four without having watched one through three because you actually get that, oh my god, all this happened leading up to this moment that's now the final chapter.
Yeah,
um
even back then, and now, of course, now this many years later, of course, like I'm certain, I guarantee, probably the first one I ever saw was like on USA Network, and it was
hmm.
probably Takes Manhattan.
Yeah,
If I had to guess, I don't know.
with Rhonda Shears up all night.
Yeah. Oh
Okay, I
yeah.
just dated myself with that one.
Those were the days, man. USA Network was cool.
And Gilbert Godfrey, yeah.
Hmm.
Those late night shows.
Yeah, absolutely.
um but no, like I said, the Friday 13th series is immensely, like, I mean, hell, dude, I mean, I have that. I can't That's the thing, is I can't tell you how many versions of the damn series and franchise I own. I've got it all on VHS, I've got it all on the original DVD release, and then I've got, this one here. If it'll show up, there we go, the
Yeah, oh,
box set.
I thought about getting that when they dropped it, like went to its lowest price on Amazon,
You
but
dude, you
I
need
just
to.
could not justify it, so
Let
I
me tell you
passed
something.
on it.
Let me tell you something, man. I made I Now this, all admittedly, and I've said this in previous episodes, it was actually a gift for when I had a medical issue last year. It was a
Yeah.
get well gift, like the ultimate get well gift. I'm like,
Yes. Pretty cool.
but I missed out on the original Michael Myers Scream release that came out a few years ago. I think 2017, 2018. And when it came out, there was two versions. They were both Blu-ray. They were both special edition, collector's editions. There was a 10 disc version and a 15 disc version. The 15 disc version had a few extras in it, but I think the 15 disc had everything plus that the 10 had, and a few extras. But it was Halloween 1 through 6, H2O, Resurrection, and then the two Rob Zombie remakes,
Which I've
plus
never seen.
plus extra discs. Okay,
Okay.
so it was like the ultimate. It had behind the scenes stuff, deleted, like the deleted scenes, alternate TV versions because they had to edit it for time, and they had to put some other stuff into it to make up for some of the time in the content. So I ended up passing on it. Like the most expensive one was like 140. It was like 150, 160. It was not cheap, obviously. I mean, for that many movies, it wasn't a bad deal, but still, it's one of those. I decided to pass on it.
It's hard to spend it all at once, I guess, is always my thing.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
here's the crazy part.
I'll buy each of those movies, over a year or whatever. Okay, no problem.
Yeah, exactly. But man, I had regret because within a year, they sold. There was a limited run, and I'll be damned. Now you can look on Facebook Marketplace, you can look on eBay, and that thing is going. Sometimes you find someone that has it used and open, and it's got some little, the little cardboard thing is not perfect, and they're selling it even at that for $100, $110, $150, and even at that price, even at that, it's going like hotcakes. but I've actually seen it on sale, for sale rather, not on sale, for sale, $500, $600. The
Yeah.
most expensive one I've seen is at 800, and they're actually people are buying it at that cost. And I was like, damn. So recently, actually, well, it's supposed to be October 5th. It was supposed to release it September 27th. Then they pushed back to October 5th, but certain retailers, Best Buy, accidentally put it out on its original release date. They released a 4K transfer of Halloween 1 through 5.
Oh, nice.
It's an all collector's edition. So it brings the 4K, the Blu-ray, as well as all the behind the scenes stuff that was previous release and then some. And these cool little slip covers, which I mean, people go crazy for that. So they were supposed to release on the 27th. Then they got pushed back to the 5th. But like I said, Best Buy didn't get the memo apparently. So you've got some people that already got it, and then some people who are waiting for it, like me. You know, I ordered mine via Amazon. I'm supposed to get them broken up. So before the end of the month, I will have all of them. I think I'll get 2 next week, and then like 2 the following week, and then the last one's like the last week of October. So
Nice.
it's a piece together. But no, like I said, especially just to change gears here with Halloween. One thing about Friday 13th versus Halloween that I really respected and loved that Friday 13th did for the longest time is they didn't deviate from the core. And what I mean by that is, even though each movie took its own unique pathway, even Jason X didn't try to rewrite its history.
Right. Yes, correct.
The
Gotcha.
Final Friday, Jason Goes to Hell, did not attempt to rewrite its history. They tried to expand on the mythos, but they didn't rewrite history. With Halloween, and we've broached this before, but with Halloween, you have, I've had to think at the top of my head at least 5 or more different timelines that exist now. You have the original 6 films before H2O, that were, and they were a cohesive story, except part 3. We all know part 3 was its own offshoot, but part 1, 2, and 4 through 6 was actually a cohesive story. Part 1 and 2, it's Jamie Lee Curtis. She survives. She ends up in the hospital. He hunts her down in the hospital. She survives again. Then 10 years later, 88, we find out that her character had a child named Jamie, homage to Jamie Lee Curtis, who her parents died. So the Laurie Strode character and whoever the father was, which a lot of people think it was the ambulance driver in part 2, somehow died in a car accident, and she's with this adopted family. And Michael finds out about it and redoes everything. So he's still hunting his family for whatever reason. We start getting hints of that reason in part 5, and then part 6, we kind of see it come, not full circle, but we kind of see that reason play out. You still had Dr. Loomis and everybody, and that was that 6th movie, and that 6 movies where that story, it gave it an ending. So that whole arc that was 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 ended at 6. Then you had H2O, which was a very kind of ambiguous sequel, because they never came out and said, hey, we're a direct sequel to part 1 only, or we're a direct sequel to part 1 and 2 only, or we're a sequel to everything, but we're not going to reference the past. We're going to say that Laurie somehow went away. They never reference her daughter. So that's what I'm saying. It's kind of an ambiguous sequel. So it's a continuation, but we don't know what kind of continuation. And that's followed up by Resurrection, which I don't have anything to say about Resurrection. I mean, come on, man. I can't believe that Jamie Lee Curtis did that one.
It's funny too, because I was sitting here, because like I said, me and Brian have been working through them again, and I think I've seen all of the ones all the way up. I think I've seen all of them. I think, but there's got to be some that I've only seen once, and I just don't really recall specifically.
It's probably
funny. It's funny too, you talking about the timelines, because the thing about Halloween 3 is people might not, if they don't recall, it's interesting because not only is it different in that it doesn't have Michael Myers, it explicitly states that Michael Myers and Laurie Strode are just a movie.
Yeah, because we see a commercial for it
as a nice little Easter egg, which is cool until you decide to make more movies. Like, it's not even like they can coexist in the same universe, like really, because it's like in the Halloween 3 universe, Halloween was a movie.
Exactly.
Kind of a neat little touch. But
and for those who haven't seen it yet, we did an episode regarding how specific to Halloween 3. Go check it out. But just for food for thought on that, we go more in depth in that episode, but I'll just give a quick run through on it. The issue Halloween 3 was an experiment where John Carpenter did not want to continue doing sequels, but he liked the idea of putting out a Halloween themed horror movie every Halloween, every October. Kind of like an anthology like Creepshow, but instead of it being a movie that contains 4 or 5 stories anthology, it was one theme, one story every year. Kind of like Saw ended up doing it basically. At one point, you had a Saw movie every October for almost a decade. I think they got up to like seven saws or something like that.
I don't recall. I don't do so I can do the slasher stuff. I don't do the straight up
Yeah.
just like the torture gore stuff is not like Hostel Saw. That's not for me.
No, I got you. But that's the thing. So they called it Halloween for 2 reasons. One, because it was supposed to happen on every Halloween. So the true name of that story was Season of the Witch, which it was, it dealt with Celtic witchcraft. So there's the
Which is
tie-in.
which
But
is funny because I'm such a moron until I watched it this last time. I've seen it 5 or 6 times. I didn't understand why it was called Season of the Witch. And then it was fun like, oh, Celtic witchcraft. I get it. Like, I don't know. I just didn't put it together. I guess
but
I didn't think hard enough about it or something.
don't feel bad because I still see people today who've seen it a crap load of times and they never picked up that the Celtic magic, sorcery
Yeah.
stuff. I'm like, that's called
That
witchcraft.
that's the witch.
Season of the
Yeah.
Witch.
Yeah. No idea why.
But so that if you watch it like we talked about with Matt and Morgana, if you watch it understanding it's not a Michael Myers film, it's actually enjoyable. I mean,
I think it's a
it's
great
actually as a
movie.
standalone film, it was good. It's just,
Yeah.
and I even think that they would not have called it Halloween 3, that they would just called it Halloween Season of the Witch. People wouldn't have had that necessary connection because it wasn't directed by John Carpenter did produce it, and he was involved with it, but it wasn't billed like John Carpenter's Halloween, John
Right.
Carpenter's Halloween 2. It was just Halloween Season of the Witch. So had
Well,
they not put the 3 on it, the producers put it because they wanted name recognition. They
that's
wanted
right.
to, hey,
Yeah.
it's the
And
Halloween series.
it's just confusing for everybody because like I remember being confused. Just like I said, oh, I didn't realize that Jason Hockey Mask Jason's not in 1 and 2.
Hmm.
It's the same thing with Halloween. It's like there's this Halloween 3 movie. Well, I've seen 1 and 2. Let's watch 3. Oh wait, there's no Michael Myers in this. What the heck is this
And then
about?
you go, wait a minute, that's a Michael Myers commercial. What
And
the
then
hell?
yeah, and then until like I said, kind of touching on what we just talked about, like, and then I was like, and there's no Michael Myers in it, and it's named Season of the Witch, and there's no witches in it. I'm real confused.
Except for the
I'm
mask.
at least I'm less confused now. So
Yeah, I mean, but like I said, I enjoyed it. But then, like I said,
I
when you
love
come
that
out,
movie.
oh yeah, it's awesome. But like I said, then you fast forward to 2018, you have the Halloween 2018, and you have Halloween Kills coming out next week, and then we already know it's a trilogy, so there's gonna be a third movie that comes out next Halloween.
Which I
But
could
the
have
thing,
sworn that was called going to be Halloween Dies,
yeah, that's what I'm hearing, yeah,
but it's like going to be Halloween Ends, I think.
or something.
And
I
yeah,
think whatever the
I'm
subtitle is,
confused.
it implies an ending. We know that
Yeah.
much. But the thing is, though, we talked about timelines. When Halloween 2018 came out, they were saying, "Hey, we're retconning everything back to part 2. So this is a direct sequel to part 1 and 2." Then they released another statement saying, "Actually, this is a direct sequel to part 1. Part 2 and forward never happened in this universe."
That's right.
And so that's why I'm kind of like, well, damn. I mean, Jamie Lee Curtis, that she by doing that, she even nixed her own continuity from part 2, H2O, and Resurrection, and actually, well, from all of them because she was still Jamie's mom in part 4, 5, and 6. So it's like
Right.
you took out your own legend almost, man. I mean, I mean,
It's kind
damn,
of wild. Yeah.
it's crazy. Um, so yeah, I'm not quite sure what her issue was with because I don't think she was a fan of anything. Part 2, I don't know if she liked or not, and pretty much everything past that, I don't think she's. I think she's on record as not being a fan. I could be mistaken. Um, but because I know when the big scuttlebutt was when she did H2O, she agreed to do it on the condition that either her or Michael dies,
Right.
and
Someone's
it
got to go.
ends.
This
Exactly.
town's not big enough for the both of us.
But when it came out, people watched it. They wanted more. So that's that money machine. But like I said, there's kind of coming back to the core here. Halloween, Friday 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street. Those are any good go tos. Some other, like I said, honorable mentions. I said Night of the Living Dead, Night of the Demons. American Werewolf in London will always hold a special place in my heart. That's one of my favorite werewolf movies of all time.
I need to
Um,
watch it then. I have
yes,
not
you need.
seen it.
Yes, you need to. We actually got to, like I said, it's also loaded. I'm not sure if it's on this one or our Torchbearer channel. We actually got to interview the main character from it, who played the werewolf at Days
Oh,
of the Dead 2015, and we also got to interview Tony Todd. So I still love the Tony Todd interview. Um, but no, I mean, there's a ton of movies, and even newer ones. Like there's one called Dog Soldiers. I'm a big werewolf fan, so The Howling.
I see
Oh
that.
my God, The Howling had Dee Wallace, aka E.T.'s mom,
Uh-huh.
the mom from E.T. But no, even for those times, those were practical effects. CGI wasn't a thing back then. So to see the transformation, I mean, there was actually acting involved as well as practical effects, because you had to have the character like, undulating and gyrating, whatever, with pain. And that,
Yeah.
because his bones are breaking and shifting and all that stuff. So, when CGI came about, you kind of got robbed of some of that coolness. But I mean, there's a ton of horror movies nowadays. I definitely have a Shutter subscription, so that's always a good thing. I love
I
it. I
do
love.
I do right now because I couldn't find my DVD or for Halloween 4 the other day. So I said,
Uh-huh.
well, I'll do the trial, and then I figured, well, I'll keep it at least through October. So
Okay, so what did your son think of Halloween 4?
he enjoyed it. Thought it was good, and he had a little bit of a gripe with the end of it. He thought he thought the idea, it's Jamie, right, with an
Yeah,
M, not Janie. Jamie.
Jamie.
He
Yeah,
thought
like
he
yeah.
thought her mean mugging at the end was a little much. He Now, and if you've been in the car with him, so you've heard him talk about wrestling and his thoughts on like
Hmm.
wrestling. He has an eye for like little things like
Oh
that,
yeah,
and so it was just a little thing. He goes, he kind of like more of the blank Michael Myers
from the first one.
look, as opposed to her like trying to look scary. And I was like, you know what, I respect that. That's a pretty good take.
Oh
So
no, I mean
we
your
enjoyed it
son,
though.
your son for his age pays uber attention. I mean, I'm like I mean that is very cool.
He
And
understands storytelling a lot better than,
yeah.
well, a lot of wrestlers. I got to be honest with you.
No, I believe it. But that's actually a very awesome observation he made though, because part of, and this, I get into an argument with people who, they'll ask me if I'm a fan of the original Halloween movies versus the Rob Zombie remakes. And I tell them, I'm like, look, it's kind of a no contest. And I'm not saying that it's not worth watching. They're two very different interpretations of a story. And like I said, it's the reason, and your son actually hit it with when he was comparing Jamie's, heel turn per se,
Yeah.
um, to Michael's in the very first movie. And what people don't, so a lot of people don't seem to grasp is the reason the first movie did what it did, shocked how it shocked, and is such a staple. Okay, is because it was an example of how at that time, middle America family, you know, they were like the perfect family, the apple pie family, cookie cutter family, whatever you want to call it. And out of nowhere, one night, their youngest son commits this murder of his sister. And when they pull his mask off, he's just like,
Yeah.
it's the, like you said, the blankness and the lack of reason and the out of nowhere. Oh my God, how could this happen in this area? This doesn't happen in this neighborhood. This doesn't happen here. That kind of thing rocks that community. That's, it was like, oh my God, it can happen here. And that was part of the scary part of it, is like, hey, look, it's the quiet, the whole, it's the quiet ones, or this and that. That movie is responsible for a lot of that kind of mythos of like, it's the least one you expect. With her, I agree with what your son observed. Now that now that you pointed it out, I was like, damn, he's right. You saw emotion on her where you didn't see on him. And
Yeah. And
this
it's
is
just, yeah,
where I
go
get
ahead.
into it with the Rob Zombie movies. Is this? I watched them. I did like, I liked them for what they were. They were a remake, but I can't compare them because Rob Zombie told a story of why, which for me kind of takes away some of the horror from some of the scary part and unsettlingness of the first film. You kind of just took that away, because the thing about the first film is that here we didn't have a reason why this happened, and then he's Michael is who he is. Over here, he comes from a trashy family. I'm not trying to,
Right.
if you've seen the movie,
Yeah.
he's getting severely picked on at school. The kid's obviously got issues already. It's showing that he's got a reason to have these psychological issues, and then he finally acts out. So it's one of those, you're not as shocked that he went crazy. You're really not. Whereas in the
Yeah.
original, you didn't
It's
see it coming out of anywhere.
it's like in the original series, it's like Michael Myers kills, like for some reason a shark swims. Shark's got to keep moving. It
Hmm.
does what it does. And I
Exactly.
think I think the pendulum is going to start, or it has maybe already started swinging back towards. For a while, there was this mentality, and I saw it a lot in wrestling. But you see in movies where it's like people demanding that like every aspect of every plot point be explained,
I
every
know,
bit
and I
of
hate
back.
that.
And and I think the pendulum might be swinging back the other way finally, where people realize, okay,
It's a
this is
movie.
yeah, and there's just no sense in like you don't need every little piece of you don't need to see it all, you don't need to know it all,
Yeah.
and you can set a you can set up a world. I give you an example. I read an article and I wish I could point you to it because it would be tremendous to read. It was talking about what a good job the movie Roadhouse, as goofy as that movie is, and
Yeah.
I have an actor friend who just he couldn't even bring himself to sit all the way through it. You know, no matter how much we talked about how dumb fun it is and this and the other. But the premise of this article is that it does an excellent job of world building in the
Yeah.
sense that it tells you that hey, there's this like network of bouncers who all know
Hmm.
each other. That bouncers are like famous people, coolers technically,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
and that there is this position called a cooler. Have you Did you know that a cooler existed before you saw Roadhouse?
Hell
I did
no.
not. Right,
I was like, I guess he cools down
yeah,
people when they get, want
in
to
that
fight and stuff.
in pre-internet days, bars all across this country
Hmm.
know about these men like Wade Garrett, and it's like they basically tell you this,
Hmm.
they illustrate this, and you just accept it and you move on. And it's
Yeah.
really cool. It's pretty impressive, really, right? But now it's like people would need all that explained. Now we got to find out what Wade Garrett did when he was in elementary school, and how did him and Dalton meet. Like, it's like you don't need all that. You just, Dalton and Wade is Dalton's mentor, and that's all you need, and we're off and running.
Yeah.
That's what I need to know.
It's like, I suggested one time, and I don't know if you guys have seen it yet. It's not really a horror movie per se. I would call it, sci-fi thriller. The Wraith, the '80s movie with Charlie
We
Sheen with the
we
cars.
watched it
Oh,
after you recommended. We did
so
watch
what'd
it.
you think?
Yes,
What'd you guys think?
it was pretty cool.
That was one of those like sleeper hits. I don't recall it going to theaters, but if it did, I
Hmm.
was too young to see it at that point. I saw it when it was already like on HBO and stuff, or even cable TV. But that was a movie that if you watched it today, not a remake of it, if you actually watched it today,
Hmm.
which actually I did with my sons, and they did, one of them got into it in a good way, like they were sucked in. They like, dude, that was actually a really cool, movie. It was the pacing and everything was good. The other one started asking the questions that we were just talking about. But how did he come back? Obviously, an alien force. Okay, but why did they bring him back? I don't know. It's kind of like
Yeah,
it's
it's
like okay,
maddening.
you don't have to see everything. We knew enough. We knew that spoilers ahead. And if you haven't watched The Wraith, go watch it actually before you hit unpause or come back or whatever to this part. It's a kick-ass movie. Um, we know that he dies. We know that they throw him down the gully, he catch on fire. We know that something brought him back, um, and attempted to restore him as much as they could. And one thing that one son caught it, the other one didn't. They're like, but why does this thing disappear every time he kills one of them? If you notice, it's on his entire body. Each appendage has this weird like metal brace over the suit he's wearing, and each time he kills one of his killers, that brace goes away. Almost like I'm like, think about it this way: maybe he's getting a piece of himself back from them. That's why each brace is disappearing because as he kills them, he's restoring even more. And so I'm like, look, you're killing me. Stop asking the questions. It's a
Yeah,
movie. It's
it's
fantasy. Enjoy
well,
the fantasy.
and not everything if something is not. I'm trying to say this without saying a double negative, but I guess I'm not. I don't think I can think well enough to do that. Basically, you don't have to explain something in excruciating detail in order for it to not be a plot hole.
Hmm.
You see what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of
Yeah,
people that scream plot hole at everything. It's like, what's a plot hole? It's like it's not a plot hole. Like, like not everything needs excruciating detail. Some things
yeah.
are just illustrated to you and you move on and you're like, okay, great. It's not that big a deal.
I mean, a plot hole. A plot hole denotes that something was set up and never completed. In this
Yeah.
case, like with the Wraith, the setup is there. He's a mysterious drifter with
Right.
otherworldly powers that can't be explained by man.
That's
That,
it.
what?
That's all you
There's no
need.
plot hole.
Don't
The
need
movie
any
starts
further
there.
explanation. That's right.
Exactly.
That's the
Um,
premise. Let's move on.
no, exactly. I mean, you want to talk plot holes? Okay, here plot holes, and this is actually a good segue into something I just saw today and that I sent to you. We are getting another Resident Evil live action movie, but it's called Resident Evil: Welcome to Raccoon City. And it is, don't get me wrong. I know I'm about to catch hate for what I'm about to say. Okay, it's the Resident Evil. Right now, it looks like the Resident Evil movie we've been wanting the whole time. Okay, no offense to Mila Jovovich's six movie series, but this one is actually looks like it's an amalgam of the first two games. You're actually getting the story told in the games, put together. I think the first two games are kind of put together, maybe even a little bit of part three. But we are actually getting the characters that we were expecting from the beginning. And we're getting the representation that we were expecting. The thing with the Resident Evil video games, I don't know if you played them or not, but one thing that was so cool about them is that they, from the very beginning of the first game on PS1, it was like being in a horror movie. They called it, survival horror experience. And they
Mhm.
were right. You were literally thrust into a horror movie about zombies. That first game, even by today's standards, it could be difficult to beat even now. The second one was awesome. But there was a lot of story put into it. It wasn't just a shoot 'em up game. I mean, there actually was story, espionage, the corporate thing, the underground stuff, the spy stuff, and that happened to also involve zombies. The second game, really the story really went deep. They really went good with it, and it wasn't just enjoyable as a game. The story was awesome. So that's what I think the core game fans, have been wanting to see that translated onto the screen. With the first Resident Evil, when I first watched it, I was a big Res fan, and when I saw it in the theaters after I watched it, I was pissed because I'm like, where's Chris Redfield? Where's Jill
Right.
Valentine? Where's Albert Wesker? Like what is this? We had the mansion, we have the underground spot, but I'm like, you all introduced
It's
this monster in this movie when they didn't come out till the second game, and we didn't even get spoilers. We didn't even get the main monster from the first game even seen in this one.
it's
I'm
it's
like,
like
what? It was like, and a friend of mine, God rest in peace. He passed away some years ago. Named Kurt back in the day. He saw I was pissed off. He goes, there's a way that maybe you won't be pissed about it. I go, why is that? He goes, watch the beginning again. I'm like, okay, so watch it. He goes, you already, and I'm here already getting into it. And they're like, no, hold on, you missed it. I'm like, where did I miss it? He's like, when they're giving you the Umbrella Corporation is the largest pharmaceutical, they're kind of giving a little backstory. But before you see any action, he goes, there's one line in there that should actually kind of change what this movie is. I'm like, okay. So I watch it, and I still missed it. And I watched it like for the fourth time with him, and I finally caught it. It says, this is the events that led to the mansion incident in Raccoon City. He's like, it's a prequel to the game. I'm like, son of a.
yeah.
But once you had once you kind of realized it was actually a prequel, then I was like, okay, no one's so bad then. So maybe, part two will get something. The second movie, Resident Evil Apocalypse, was more like part two and part three, but part one was still kind of, that story still never got told. We met Jill Valentine, and then the rest of the movies just kind of, they started throwing in game characters, but they weren't really used for what they were. You
Yeah,
know,
it's kind of like seeing Masters of the Universe as a kid.
yeah,
Like you're familiar with what He-Man looks like, and you get this movie, oh, that'll be cool, and it looks nothing like He-Man. Like really.
yeah.
It's like He-Man in name only.
Was he in the movie? He was never Prince Adam, so we don't even know if he was really Prince Adam or not in the movie.
Yeah, and what was the story? I guess they scrapped all the Eternia stuff, and then they gave him a costume that didn't really look like. It's almost like kind of what it sounds like those movies did to some degree. It's
Yeah,
like
oh, yeah.
it's like you thought you're getting this thing, and instead you're getting this other thing that's not exactly what you wanted.
No, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, so I'm excited that we got the new Halloween. It comes out next month. Not Halloween, but Resident Evil. Halloween comes out next week. New Resident Evil comes out next month. I just like I said, I think the trailers for it just dropped today. Maybe, or if not today, like within the last couple days. But no, the trailers look awesome. I mean, it's what I was wanting to see, so I'm excited, definitely excited to see that. It just sucks that it comes out next month and not this month. It's like,
Hey,
man, November. It's like, and then it's like November 24th. I'm like, Thanksgiving,
yeah, it's a bad time to have to, go see a movie
Thanksgiving.
like that, right?
Exactly. So I'm like, um, but no, like I said, I can't wait for it. And like I said, I just, so far we've done a couple. I've been doing horror movies now with the son, with my boys. This, like we were watching, what did we just watch the other day? We watched Quarantine 2. It was a straight to video release of the first
Mm,
movie. That most times you get like a direct on demand or direct video. It's like, okay, it's a sequel in name only. It's not gonna have anything to do with it. But we were pleasantly surprised. It's called Quarantine 2 Terminal, and it actually does a great job of it honestly could is a standalone movie, but it references enough of the events of the first movie that you don't have to go back and watch it to know why it's connected. I was one of those. Okay, that was actually pretty good. I was impressed for a straight on demand direct to video. Back in when we had video blockbuster days, direct to video is what the term we used to use. Now it's
yep.
direct to demand or something like that now.
Yeah. Right.
But I thought it was pretty good. Um, we okay. I told you need to watch. I don't know if you watched it yet. Malignant.
Oh no, I meant to,
Okay, I'm not
and
gonna say
hopefully,
anything.
hopefully, I'll watch it before we get the full panel back together. But
Okay,
no, I have not seen that one yet.
okay, I'm not gonna say anything because I don't want to prep you, positive or negative, for it. But that's all. I'm not gonna say anything else. I'm gonna stop right there. Um, now, do you like anthologies like Creep Show? Is
I
that? I
don't.
mean, that's
I'm
not
trying to think
everybody's
of.
thing.
I'm trying to think of an example of one I've ever watched, and I
You've
don't know
never
that I
seen Creep
have.
Show,
No, have not. Like I said,
dude?
I'm the lightweight on this horror panel.
Okay, we're gonna have to get you to watch that. There's one that's happening. They're up to their fourth movie now. It's called VHS, and it's
Yes,
kind of
see
like
that.
okay. So you've seen one of
No,
them.
no. I mean,
You've heard of it though.
I'm sorry. I'm aware it exists. Yes, that's
Okay,
what I meant.
so I watched it one day. I didn't know what the hell it was. I was like VHS. What the hell is this? And it was freaky. It was an anthology, so it was a collection of different things. But the way they did it, it was almost like the idea of the old 80. You remember Nicolas Cage's 8 millimeter.
Yeah, I
The snuff
remember
film.
that.
Except whereas a snuff film, there's oftentimes sexuality. This wasn't really that. It was just like, hey, it was found footage of different people's demises.
Hmm.
Some freaky, some funky, some natural, some supernatural, and it was just a really cool. And they do get put together with a central story, which I'm leave it there. But I saw the first one and I was like, I was hooked. When I heard there was a second one, I watched it. So it's VHS, then VHS two, and then VHS viral, meaning like the YouTube crazes
Yeah.
like
Oh yeah.
that.
You. Yeah. Okay.
And then
Yeah.
they just released one that's on Shutter. Uh, this one I know is on Shutter because I watched it actually today. But I don't know if the older ones are on there. You have to kind of find them. This one was called VHS 94, as in 1994. And
Yeah.
they did a really good job of dating it back to then. They even put in like, you remember back in the old VHS days, the tracking is off. So you have like
Yeah.
the
Oh yeah.
lines. They even put that digitally in there. So no, they did. It was really cool. So if you get the chance to watch them, those are good, definitely good watches for Halloween if you dig the anthology thing. Um, but so speaking of list of movies, okay. So I came across an article today, and I actually sent it to you just a little bit ago. The list of it. So it was more than just a survey. It is a survey. Oh man, glasses. Join the club.
Yeah. I got to put the
So
cheaters on. That's right.
so it was a survey where the question is always existed in many times everywhere. What is the scary movie of all? Right. So obviously we all know that is a loaded ass question, and there's no way that one survey is going to get it. And I will say, yeah, I don't believe the survey got it, because the survey, just a quick thing. So the survey surveyed 50 people. So already we know that's really not enough, but 50
Yeah.
people.
Sure.
Now, what was interesting is they didn't just do a survey where well, first they surveyed 50 people who had to watch 100 hours of scary films. So that's another thing. With all the horror movies that are out there, whether they went to theaters, whether they didn't, whether they're on Shutter, independent, whatever, we all know 100 hours of horror movies is not even a drop in the bucket. We know that. So keep that in mind. But what I found interesting was this didn't gauge it based off of asking people, hey, were you scared? 1 to 10, how scared were you? No, no, no. What they did was they actually had these people hooked up to heart monitors and actually caught their heart rates at rest, what their average beats per minute were, what the difference was when it hit its peak, and what the peak was. Okay. So they put together with that. So they had 50 people participate, multiple ages, multiple backgrounds, etc. And they did it with 100 hours worth of movies. So they put together their list of top 35. Now, 21 through 35, they don't give the information on the heart rate, but from 1 to 20, they do. So it gives you their average heart rate. It gives you the difference between the average and the highest peak, and then it gives you what it peaked at. So the list, like I said, 30, 20 is not a huge number, but we're not going to go into all of them. But I am going to read you the list from 35 to number 1 and just give you a few key ones after we reveal the list. So feel free to jump in and say if you think, because if you think some of the ones on this list and what order they come in are bullshit or not. And I'm going to say that because when I went through it, there was some like, okay, and there was some like, oh, bullshit. So
I'm trying to count how many I've actually seen.
I've seen
So
a
I'm
couple.
looking through.
So 30, I'm going to go ahead and start here. So 35, Audition. I haven't seen it. Okay, I've heard of it, haven't seen it. Number 34, Get Out. It's on my docket to watch, but I heard so many good things about it that I'm kind of surprised, especially for a new film. I'm a little surprised it's that low, but like I said, keep going. Number 33, The Shining. Number 32, The Omen. Number 31, Wolf Creek. Number 30, Dark Skies. Number 29, The Orphanage. Number 28, Friday the 13th. Now, I take issue with that because I'm surprised it is that low, but at the same time, they do not know which movie, if it's the original movie or if it's the 2009 remake or any of the in between. So I think there needs to be an asterisk there unless they actually define which one it is.
I could argue that if it's the I could argue if it's the first movie, there may not be that many. Like, probably you got your scarier moments in one of the hockey mask Jason ones.
And that's
I'd
that's
imagine.
true, and that's true. That's what I'm saying. It's kind of weird because the assumption is that it's the first one, and I could definitely see like if it's the first one, I can see that it's not in the top 10. But I would have thought it would have at least made the top 20. But that's just my opinion. Number 27, Annabelle. Number 26, Poltergeist. If I was young, if it was me younger, I would say Poltergeist should be higher. Now I'm like, okay, it doesn't have the same thing because you've had movies have gone way past the effects, so I can kind of see that. This one, these next two, I take major issue with, and I'll tell you why. Number 25, The Thing, with Kurt Russell. Number 24, Alien, and then beating them both at number 23, The Blair Witch Project.
Which I've never seen the Blair Witch Project, but I have seen Alien.
But that's what I'm saying. So I'm like, hold on, The Blair Witch Project comes in at higher than Alien or John Carpenter's The Thing. And on The Thing, I kind of have to give it this. I'm assuming they mean John Carpenter's The Thing because there is an original version, black and white, by Howard Hawks that was The Thing from Another World. Okay, John Carpenter's Thing is technically a reimagining remake of that one, but it's a freaking classic. So it's kind of like the Friday the 13th. Depends on which version, but if they're John Carpenter's The Thing, then I take issue with The Thing being below and Alien both being below Blair Witch Project. Blair Witch Project was cool, but it wasn't Alien or The Thing cool. I'm sorry. Once again, that's my opinion, but still. Number 22, The Witch. I liked it. I'd say maybe a little higher, but Number 21, The Grudge. That should be top 20. That was Sarah Michelle Gellar, supernatural film. It was actually based off of a Japanese film called Ju-on, which means The Grudge. And that was the Japanese know psychological horror. Let me just leave it there. Because same thing with The Ring. The movie The Ring was based off of a movie called Ringu. Same thing. Ring was an Americanization of the Japanese version. That Japanese version is freaky as hell. I've got them somewhere. I'll let you borrow one. It's when you compare them, it's like, dude, hands down, the Japanese version is creepy.
I saw The Ring on wanted to take a young lady on a date, and so we were going to go to the movies.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Do you want to go see The Ring?" And at this point, I wasn't really watching horror movies, but what I didn't want to say was, "I'm frightened to go see The Ring," so I went and saw The Ring, and it was
How was
good.
it? It was good. No, don't get me wrong. As good as the American.
Good, but I remember going, "Are you sure you don't want to watch something else?" And but I can just kind of like, all right, I'll man up. I'll go see The Ring.
It was. I liked the American one. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't bad, but as good as it was, that Japanese one was just more psychologically thriller. It was just freaky as hell. All right, now that was the 21 through 35. Now
Yep.
the 11 through 20. Oh, sorry, do you have a question?
Nope.
Okay. Next, now here's where we start getting some of the beats per minute on on the heart rate. So we'll give you some, but we're not going to go through all of them. Number 20, the original Scream. Here's an example as a barometer. So they said that the average heart rate for this one was 73 beats per minute, and that they found that the difference between that to peak was 8. So they peaked out at 81 beats per minute. Okay, not too high, but still. So number 19, It. Same thing. They don't differentiate if it's the original miniseries from the 90s or if it's the recent film or films plural. But like I said, that one was like 70, average 75, peak 89. Number 18, Hush. I haven't seen that one. 76, peak of 86. The Exorcist, 77, peak 92. 28 Days Later. I love this film.
Very cool movie.
One of my favorite. This was
Enjoy
one of
the
those.
heck out of it.
Oh yeah, that's one that is actually on my list for Halloween films to watch. I mean, the story of it, everything was it was flipping phenomenal. I loved it. 20 Days Later is number 16 with 77 average and a spike of 95, a peak of 95. Then the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Same thing. We know there's been a remake. The assumption we're going to go with is the original. 77 was the average heartbeat. 98 was the peak, and that came in at number 15. I've watched the original. I own the original. I am a fan of the original. I don't know that I agree, and I'm sure someone's going to say I'm full of it for this one. Even taking into consideration the age of the original, 28 Days Later coming below it. Now, granted, it's just below it, so it's an easier pill to swallow. But I'm like, I don't know that I'd put it there. But at the same time, there's merit to it. I will say that. So just throwing that out there. Number 14, and I thought this would have come in higher. Halloween. That one had 77. Oh, I'm sorry. Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 77 and 98 was the peak. I don't know if I said that. Halloween, 77 and 101. So we finally break the triple digits on it with Halloween. Nightmare on Elm Street comes in at number 13, 78 and 104. And I'm sure we have the killer dream sequences, pardon the pun, for that. Because I mean, in that original movie, the Tina kill sequence and the dream where she's getting drug in the high school in her body bag. I mean, that's even today, that's disturbing imagery. A Quiet Place, 78 beats was the average. And we get a pretty good jump here. We go from 104 with Freddy up to 122. Now, this next one, hear me out. This next one is where I start maybe calling BS on this list. Here's why. The Ring, 79 beats per minute is the average. It peaked at 107. Yet it came ahead of A Quiet Place, which had one average beat lower, so 78 beats per minute as the average, and peaked at 122. But they're saying the difference was only 13 beats per minute. Call me crazy. That's more than 13 beats per minute.
Yeah, I don't quite understand the criteria here.
So this was the first one, number 11 and 12, where I'm like, okay, something doesn't seem.
Oh, it's difference in percentage, I think.
Maybe, but I don't know. I mean, it's
those
still
numbers work. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy here. So that's the number 11. So before we get to the top 10, they did actually give us the ones that had the biggest jump scares by heart rate. So they don't give them the order. They just say what movie it was and what the peak was. So Insidious peaked out at 133 beats per minute. Sinister peaked out at 131 beats per minute. The Exorcist 3 peaked out at 130. The Conjuring at 129. And The Descent at 122. So I guess that's like their honorable mentions. Now the top 10. Number 10, The Visit, 79 and 100. The Descent, 79 and 122 at number 9. I always say bad book. It's The Babadook, at number 8. 80 was the average at 116 spiked. The Conjuring 2, 80 beats per minute average at 120 beats per minute. I was actually more freaked out by the first one than I was the second one. This is a personal observation, but that's just me. Number six, I was very shocked because I know a bunch of people. I know there's a bunch of people that just like pretty much loathe this film. It Follows comes in at number six with 81 beats per minute is the average, and 93 was the spike. Okay, so let's just go back here. Let's pause there. It Follows is number six with a spike to 93 beats per minute. Yet you have Halloween at 101 spike, Nightmare on Elm Street at 104, A Quiet Place at 122, The Ring at 107, The Visit at 100, The Descent at 122, The Conjuring 2 at 120, and they're all below It Follows. So that's where, yet again, that's even a stronger point of I'm not sure that it makes me question the validity of the survey. Now, so It Follows. Top five: Paranormal Activity, 82 and 127. Oh my God, that's a jump. Hereditary, Heredit, Dear Lord, Hereditary, not Heredity. Anyway, 83 beats per minute. My Spanish is messing with me. 83 beats per minute, topping out at 109. The original Conjuring. Okay, cool. So now I didn't see it there. So Conjuring is higher than The Conjuring 2. I can accept that. 85 beats per minute and peaks at 129. Insidious, the first one, 86, peaks at 133. And the number one, Sinister, the first Sinister film. Now here they include a resting rate for some reason for the number one. They said resting rate was 65 beats per minute. Movie was average was 86 beats per minute. A difference of, this is where it gets a little weird. They're calling the difference was 32%. And then highest spike was, which is the biggest jump scare, was at 131. Now,
So
there's something is not right. And here's why. Because number two, Insidious, granted, we don't see a resting heartbeat because the only one that they showed resting was number one.
I think I finally figured this out due to my readers here. I think this difference in beats per minute column is always, it's the difference between everybody's being compared to 65 beats per minute. The difference is not between average heart rate and highest spike. It's saying the resting heart rate is 65. The average heart rate is like on Insidious 86. The difference is 21 between those two numbers. And also here's your highest spike.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Then they further confuse it though because you just pointed this out.
Number two is higher.
And so they confused it even more because up here they decided to do resting BPM, movie BPM, and then they decided to give you this other number they don't give you for anybody else, which is the percentage difference.
Yeah.
On I'm sorry, not on Sinister.
Yeah.
So after reading through this whole thing, I think I finally understand this graphic completely. But it is unnecessarily confusing.
Well, I totally agree. But here's the one kicker. So if we're assuming that the resting rate is 65 for everybody, right? And that the 86 one is that's the average for during the movie, you have this difference, and then you have this high spike. Look at Insidious. Has the same movie average of 86.
It looks like it should be one.
Exactly, because it had the higher spike. I'm like, how? So when looking at that, it's kind of like, how hold up? Shouldn't that be flipped?
Here's what I'm thinking. My guess, given these people the benefit of the doubt, is it's a rounding issue. They rounded down.
That's what that might be it.
It must be a point something, and that point something was higher, but they don't give you the point something on the number. So
there was like
that would be my explanation.
I got you. What was it they used to do when we were back at school? They would do they would give a curve. You always had that one student that blew the curve out because they got 100.
Yeah, I was never that kid. I was never the curve.
Yeah, that was mid range, but yeah, I never messed up the curve for everybody because we'd all hate that kid that week. Damn it!
Yeah, that kid's.
You just missed like 4.
Yeah. But I missed 14. And like now I don't get any extra points because of you.
Yeah, for real. Exactly. But no, like I said, I thought it was interesting. Like I said, granted, a lot of criteria to take in consideration because there's a bunch of movies that didn't make it on here that it should have easily made it on here. Like the Hostel, Green Inferno. That one was trippy as hell just because of the effects of some of the kills in it. You got some classic ones like Cannibal Holocaust, which was actually banned
I've
in
never
a
seen that
shit
one,
ton of
but
movie
that one
theaters.
crossed my mind.
I mean, that one, for people who haven't seen it, our bro Norco, he had a YouTube channel that I would help him out with, and one of the channels that I would help him out with was one I can't remember what it was called because we kind of kept trying to evolve the title, but basically what it was is because I'm such a horror fan, he would try to get me to watch a movie that would actually disturb me. Like what kind of movie would actually mess with my head? And one of the films that he had me watch was Cannibal Holocaust. And even for the date that it was made, it's an older movie, it's a '70s film. But even despite that, it was disturbing. I would say that it deserves to be on this list for sure. It was so disturbing and it's so realistic for the time that the director of the film was actually arrested in, I think it was Italy. He was overseas and he was arrested for the, because spoiler, if go watch it, find it somewhere. In the film, there was three American cast members, or the main characters, that are murdered on film. The effects were so realistic. He was arrested for these murders. Okay. And what ended up happening was he had to contact through the American consulate, all this stuff, those actors, and he had to fly them out to appear in court to show that it wasn't him. And part of the reason was that they were like, "How did you do this?" He goes, "I can't reveal it. That's movie magic. And if I reveal it to you, then other people are going to be able to replicate what we did because apparently some of the stuff they did was ahead of its time, concepts that weren't really done. That it looked that realistic that it got him arrested. He didn't want to ruin that by having to say how he did it. So he's like, look, if I can get them, if I can prove that they're alive, you let me go without me having to tell you how I did the
Yeah.
scenes."
How the sausage is made.
Exactly. So he got the three Americans there, and that's the only reason why they eventually released him, and that's banned in many countries. I mean, a lot of countries. So like another one, Faces of Death. That was
Yeah.
whether you
Remember
believe it
that.
was a real documentary or not, that's kind of, you have to just watch it and see. That is actually on Tubi for free. On the Tubi app, it's a free. You don't even have to sign up.
Imagine the day when we heard about that back in the day. That would ever just be like, oh, here it's for free.
And for those who don't know what I'm talking about, imagine this: what we just referenced earlier in this conversation, the VHS anthology. That's movies that are out there. This would be like the original kind of thing. It's that VHS tape it was banned, and I think even in this country, supposedly it was banned because even on the front cover art it says banned in 46 countries. So it was banned because it was a collection of different forms of death, whether it was natural death or murder or getting eaten by a gator. You even see an execution. You even see a cult. I'll just leave it there. Um, but you couldn't find it anywhere, even in the U.S. It was you could not find it. So 2 days ago, I was looking through Tubi to see what was added. It's there. The original Faces of Death is actually there. I'm like, oh my god. So if you guys like that kind of thing, go check it out. You can decide for yourself if you think it's a real documentary or not, because it's billed as a documentary. Since then, there's been a lot of like challenges. Was it just a good
Yeah.
effects driven fake documentary? But check it out for what you want. But no, like I said, I think we've given a good list of films for people to watch. And like I said, there's nowadays you have so much, whether it's Prime Video, Netflix, have all these streaming services, and there's so many that are specific to just horror. Shutter being one of them. Uh, there's a multitude of stuff to watch. Another good one that I saw was called Where, just WER. It's an interesting take on. Well, you know what? I don't want to say it because it might give away part of the movie. It's called Where, but this is WER.
I've got it. I've got one recommendation.
Oh, what you got? What you got?
My son did not watch it, but he heard about it and told me to watch Creep. So
Okay,
I stayed
I
up one night and watched Creep.
How was it?
And so Creep is fantastic.
Oh,
And the spoiler, I'm not going to give you any spoilers.
I haven't seen it. So don't spoil.
Yeah. So I will just say this. It may not even really be a horror movie.
Okay. You got me interested. Creep, just Creep.
If you know the premise, the premise is simply a videographer's hired to do some work for this gentleman.
Okay.
That's the premise.
Okay.
And
I
you
will have to
watch
check that
this
out.
whole thing and just watch it.
Okay.
I,
No,
I want to
you
give
got
you
me. You
more,
got me
but like
hooked.
I don't want to, it is one of the most interesting things I think I have ever watched.
Okay.
So let's just put it that way. And I would love, like kind of like the Wraith, I would love for us to gather back, even if we just did a mini episode of this at some point. If
Yeah.
you ever
Yeah.
watch
Yeah.
that movie, you and I just talk about this movie Creep, because I will be fascinated to see what you think about it.
Oh no, cool. I will look for it.
It
Is there any specific streaming stuff that you can
I
suggest that I
think
find it?
I think at the time it was on Netflix, but I don't know
Okay.
if it still is or not.
I will check it out. Like I said, I'll look for it and check it out, and I'll try to check it out soon, so that way we can review it before the end of the haunt
And
season.
I'm gonna try to find it for you. Let's see.
And oh, speaking of haunt season, like I said, I did got to give a quick shout out. There's gonna be a few episodes coming out after this one does. The remaining two episodes from Days of the Dead Summer Edition, and my sons and I have went to our first haunt of the season this past weekend. It was the Village in Fairburn. So 13 Stories Haunted House in Noonan partnered with the Georgia Ren Fest. And so,
Ah,
so they actually turned the Georgia Ren Fest into a big haunt called the Haunted Village, and it's a walking walk through haunt, but you're going through indoors, outdoors. They turn the entire area into this, and it's not just a little rinky dinky walk because when you do especially walkthrough based haunts, it's one of those hit or miss unless it's established, where you may pay 20-30 bucks, may wait in a 45-minute line to take a 10-minute walk. You know,
yeah, yeah, no good.
this is about a 30-minute walk. It was up and down. There's points where we walked fast and then ran here and there. I mean, I was actually not winded, but when I got back to the car, I was like, "Whew, I got to catch my breath." So I did. We shot from there before we did it, and then right afterwards, we kind of got my responses and whatnot. So you're gonna be on the lookout for that. If we do end up doing a few more haunts, we'll probably upload just quick little 4 or 5 minute episodes of, we're going to this place, we're about to go, and then okay, we just finished, and was it worth it? Was it not? I enjoyed the village was cool. I definitely enjoyed it. I'd recommend it. I think for the cost, for the amount of time it takes to go through it, and some of the stuff you'll see, I think it was worth it. I think it was, if you get the tickets online, I think it's 25, and if you get it at the door, it's like 30. Um, they do have an option to skip to the head of the line for online is an extra 15, or at the door is an extra 20. I The line was maybe 20 to 30. I mean, it's a big line. It was the opening weekend. Um, but I think it's worth it at the, just my opinion is, if you're a patient person, I think it's worth it at the non skip ahead fee.
Yeah,
But to each their own. Like I said, there's people who just don't want to wait, or hell, we did meet several people. They were a group that they were doing that one, and then after they did that one, they're gonna go to another one. So they wanted to get like two or three in a night. So at that point, if you got the money and you want to hit more than one, go for it.
yep. And I
So,
just looked. Creep is still available on Netflix according to Google.
all right, well then I'm gonna add that right to my thing here right now, to my
Make sure you
the
do it.
playlist.
I recommended it to somebody else, and they were also blown away by it. So
Damn.
my
Okay.
son, who's never seen it, recommended it to me. I was blown away by it. I recommended to this other person. They were blown away by it. So
All right.
hopefully, hopefully you're also blown away by it.
We will. I will
Love that
watch it.
movie.
I will try to watch it this weekend. Let's see if we can do a follow up either sometime next week. I know you're going out of town. But yeah, when you get back, just let me know. And like I said, hopefully I'll have watched it by then, and we'll do a quick little review.
Sounds good, man.
Sweet. All right. Well, Destination Horror fans, thank you for taking the time again. And once again, if you like what you saw, hit like, subscribe. Please subscribe. We're getting good hits and whatnot, but like I said, subscribe so you know when we put this new stuff out. We are going to do our best to get some more consistent stuff out there, so definitely be on the lookout. Check out, send us information that of movies that you think we should watch and review, or haunts you want us to go to at destinationhorror@gmail.com, or on our Twitter, which is at dhorror or dhorror13. Yeah, just throw it out there, or even in the comments on this YouTube channel. So, like I said, we can't wait to get your suggestions and explore some stuff. So, we will catch you.